Twilight. One of my favorite times of the day to take pictures. Twilight usually occurs 20-25 minutes before the sun rises or after the sun sets. I take all my twilight pictures after the sun sets because I don't like getting up in the morning. Anyway, in twilight, basically the sun has set, so the city lights have already started coming on, and it's dark out. But that sky remains brightly illuminated by the setting sun. And this makes for some really, really cool pictures. Some of the twilight stuff that I've done, you're seeing coming across your screen right now. So what I'm going to attempt to do in this video is basically show you how I took these pictures, the settings I used, and the thought process behind each one of these pictures. Now, twilight photography is a lot of fun, but it does have some things that you need to take into consideration. And that's kind of what I hope to go over in this video here. So let's get started. Okay, so twilight photography. Twilight photography is basically taking pictures in very, very low light. One of the ways you do that is by opening and keeping your shutter open for extended periods of time in order to allow the camera to gather as much light as necessary to build the image. So this kind of photography brings to the forefront things that you need to consider when taking pictures in these conditions. Moving objects while your shutter is open will affect your image depending on how bright they are and how long your exposure is going to be. So you need to think about things. You need to think about your composition. What are you going to be shooting? How long do you think your shutter is going to remain open? Are there any moving objects, clouds, water, trees, flags, or signs blowing in the wind? If so, will these objects add to or distract from your final composition? Because chances are they will affect the composition. They will show up in one way or another in that final product, in that final picture. You need to know the official twilight time for the day you plan to shoot. Then you can plan to shoot as much as 30 minutes. I've taken twilight pictures as much as an hour after the sun, after official twilight, which is usually about 20-25 minutes after the sun has set. So you think about that, that's a long time after the sun set. There's still light in that sky. So you might want to consider taking pictures even after twilight. You're going to want a camera that allows manual control of aperture, ISO, and shutter speed. Virtually all DSLR cameras have this ability, and some point-and-shoot cameras also have it. Some point-and-shoot cameras will allow you to shoot in manual mode, and that's something you're going to want to do. You're going to need a good, sturdy tripod. There's absolutely no way around this. You're not going to be able to hold your camera steady enough to be able to take long exposure shots. So you're going to need a tripod to keep things steady. Again, the slightest movement can affect the final composition, or the final image rather. You'll want to use a remote shutter release system, some kind of remote shutter release system if you can. I use a Young Neural remote trigger, but you can use a cable release or even a timer. Virtually every camera nowadays has a timer where you can set your timer and then have the camera take your picture. Again, you want this because you don't want to touch the camera. Even that touch can affect the can cause a little bit of shaking in the camera, which will show up in the final image. You want to avoid that. Ideally, you're going to have a camera that has the ability to shoot pictures in raw, uncompressed mode. Raw photos extend post-processing potential very significantly. Things like white balance, exposure, clarity, saturation, and contrast can all be corrected to a much higher degree with a raw image as opposed to a JPEG image. You can do it on JPEGs, but just not to the same extent that you can with a raw image. You're going to want to remove any attached camera straps, particularly if you're shooting outdoors and in windy conditions. Even the camera strap slightly blowing in the wind can affect the image captured. I've seen this. I know it to be true, particularly in windy conditions. I've had a few incidents with that. And then very oftentimes you're going to need to be focusing manually. This is something you're going to want to kind of prepare yourself for. A lot of this depends on how sensitive your camera is to focus and what it is you're going to be focusing on. If you're focusing on something that has no detail at all, you're going to want to do that in manual mode. Okay, so let's jump into Lightroom and look at some of the settings that I use to take some of these pictures. First of all, let me start off by saying there's no hard fast rule when it comes to settings for Twilight photography. It's a lot of trial and error. I usually like taking pictures with a 5-second exposure all the way up to about 25-30-second exposure. I've done some with more and some with less, and you'll see a few of those here. So let's get started. Here on this image, this was the July 3rd that I took this one. I took both of these two of the same date, and this one here is at 8:44. That one is at 8:58. So I'll show you the difference here with regards to official Twilight. This one is an 8-second exposure at ISO 100, and this one is the same exact image, 30-second exposure at f11. Again, ISO 100. So if you want to see what the Twilight was for this particular day, this was July 3rd. This is, by the way, this is the photographer's ephemeris. This is the desktop version of this application. It also comes in a mobile version for iPhone and Android. Great application for landscape photographers, or any photographer really, when you need to work outside. This thing gives you when the sun rises, when the sun sets, when the moon rises, when the moon sets, where the sun is going to be at a given time. It gives you twilight information for any day, really. You just punch in the date and you get that information. Really cool app. You can just Google it. Again, the desktop version is free. The mobile version is a few dollars. It's not expensive. Anyway, so on this date, on July 3rd, Twilight was at 8:42. So you see the Twilight there was 8:42 for that date, and you'll see that I took that picture at 8:44. So right at Twilight. A nice image. This is one of the things that I like about Twilight is the color. The color of the sky is always so nice. Here you can start to see that the city lights have already started coming on, but there's so much light still left in that sky. And then the image right next to it is the exact same image, just about 11 minutes later, 11-12 minutes later. So you got Twilight has already happened, and this is almost 9 o'clock, and it's the same image, but you can see here that the city lights are much more pronounced now. The sky starts getting darker, it starts changing color, and the clouds there are being lit by the city, so that the orange of those clouds is actually lit by the city. And this image here, this is the Lowe's Hotel in South Beach. I spent a lot of time in South Beach. Same deal. This is 8:53. This one is actually quite a bit after Twilight as well. Again, this is here's one of the examples of moving clouds. Remember, we talked about that earlier in the video. So you can see this exposure here is a 25-second exposure. So you think about it, your shutter's open for 25 seconds. As it's open, it's capturing those clouds moving by, and you can see those clouds moving there. If you look at the palm trees, also there's a little bit of ghosting there. So that's an example of something moving while your shutter is open and it's being captured by the camera. So again, is it something that you want? Is it something that you're looking for? Does it add to your image, or does it take away from it? You have to decide. Here's another image. This is at 8:41. So this was right around Twilight. This was just the other day also. This is a 15-second exposure. This is the Clevelander, again down there on South Beach. And here you see a lot more examples of moving things. Here these are the lights of the cars as they go by. There's ghosting in the trees. The clouds are moving. Again, your shutter's open for 15 seconds, so it's capturing everything in those 15 seconds. This is same deal. This is South Beach also. There's a little bit of construction going on. This should be about done with that. Anyway, this is again quite a bit after Twilight. This is a 30-second exposure at f11, ISO 100. And then this one here, for example, this was this wasn't very long ago either. This was actually a real nice day. It's on Rickenbacker. I like this one because I got a piece of the moon here, and there's a lot of color here. A lot of color still left in the sky, and the city lights are coming on. That was a really great day too. I shot a lot of video from my Phantom, my quadcopter. That was a really nice day. Anyway, 2.5-second exposure at f9. That was May 30th at ISO is 100. And then these guys here are much shorter exposures. This is actually not my camera. My daughter shot this one. If you look at this one, the ISO is a little higher on this one. This is ISO 400. It's a 1.3 second exposure at f5. This is a trip that her and I took to Epcot. This is actually my daughter right here. ISO 800 on this one. It's a 1/13 of a second exposure at 3.5. This is another very nice picture, I think. Another Twilight picture, but much shorter exposure. It's a 0.3 at f4. And again, really nice picture. The ISO is a little high on that one as well. And I think that's oh no, I got this one last one here. This image was just the other day as well. This was quite a bit after Twilight as well. I actually got a little bit of lightning on this one. And if you look at the settings on that one, that's a 25 second exposure at f9. The ISO was 200 on that one. And that's about it, really. If you like the video, by all means, give it a thumbs up. That helps me a lot. If you like my content, by all means, subscribe to my channel. Subscribing is free. You don't get charged for subscribing. And this way, when I put out another video, you'll get notified, and you can check out that video as well. Anyway, thanks a bunch for watching. I hope this has helped anybody. And by the way, if you guys have posted some of your own Twilight images, I would sure love to see them. That way I can compare kind of what I'm doing, with other people. Now, I'm just learning this stuff, so this is just kind of insights that I've picked up as I'm learning all this. So maybe it'll help somebody out. And I sure would love to compare work. So if you guys have links to Twilight pictures that you've taken, post a comment with a link on it, and I promise you I'll check it out, and I'll leave you a comment. And this way we can kind of compare notes. Anyway, thanks a bunch for watching, guys. I really appreciate it.